Recording in progress.
We get to 1 o'clock, we're good to start share.
Not quite there, just a few more seconds. Favor? Any opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes of February 26th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing no hands, motion to adopt these. Director Gisborne and Director Fall. Any discussion? All in favor? Please vote. Carried. We have one delegation, and I'd like to welcome Michael Ernst. And please come and join us at the table. And you are with the BC Marine Parks Forever Society.
Thank you very much.
We welcome you, and you have 10 minutes. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Last week, actually, we were presenting to the Nanaimo Regional District, and it was 19 directors, and it was a much more open space. It's nice to be more into a more intimate area. I'm Michael Ernst. I'm a director with the Marine Parks Forever Society. Jim Phillips is joining me, who is the president, and Jim is the person who is going to have the knowledge. I'm just the person who is leading this initiative on behalf of our society, where our aim is to try and approach the 8 regional districts within the Georgia Strait area. Your information has been sent to you in a package, and the screen presentation here shows the background where this committee is an offshoot of the BC Council of Yacht Clubs. It is a non-profit society, and it has a CRA designation. Anything in green I'm going to deal with. Jim is going to deal with anything in black, and I'm going to ask him to take over from here and give a bit of the background of the society, because he's been with it much longer than I have. Jim, over to you.
Thank you.
Good day. Does everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to present to qathet. We have presented to BC Parks over the years and worked very closely with BC Parks. Recent times, we've worked with the BC Parks Foundation and a little bit with regional districts. So we welcome the opportunity to branch out a little bit and speak to qathet as well, and possibly we can contribute something that would make sense for your region. We've contributed over $2 million to improve 20+ marine parks by land acquisition, installing stern ties and moorings. This year, we donated $200,000 to the Parks Foundation to acquire 372 acres on Saturna Island in the Gulf Islands National Reserve. This was Parks Canada territory, but organized by ourselves through the Parks Foundation, and the heavy lifting was done by some philanthropies based in Vancouver. We're very pleased to see the outcome.
I'll take over just to present our objectives for this meeting. We first of all want to review the contributions made by the MPFS to the BC Parks in the district. And secondly, we want to discuss the possibility of future partnerships here. And we do recognize that this committee cannot make decisions. This would have to be referred to somewhere else within either another committee or to the full committee. Yeah. And the first one, of course, is the Harmony Islands Marine Provincial Park. And if you look at the bottom, on the left-hand side there, you'll see the island was acquired. I tried to find out the name of that island and I could not find it. If anybody can fill in that blank, I would really appreciate that. But Jim, do you want to talk about the contributions that were towards that acquisition in Harmony Islands? And also on your map there on the right-hand side, you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, the various properties that we're going to talk about.
Yes, Mike. Mr. Chairman, we have contributed $750,000 towards the purchase of this island, which is one of our bigger contributions. We normally contribute on the scale of a couple of $100,000, a few $100,000, but this opportunity came along and we did have the money in the bank, so we were able to purchase the island and then pass it on to BC Parks, who will incorporate it into the Harmony Islands Provincial Park. Mike, can you go down one? Thanks. Giroday Island, also in your part of the world, we contributed $100,000 to the acquisition of this very popular park. Squiddy Bay, bottom end of Lasqueti Island, another $18,000 towards the acquisition of this. Once again, working with other groups who contributed more and successfully added to fairly extensive BC Park at the bottom end of, or the bottom right-hand side of Lasqueti Island.
Do you want to carry on about stern ties, Jim, please?
Sure. We talk quite a lot, or we were promoting stern ties. I don't know if everyone on the board is familiar with this concept, but cruising boats, when they come into a park or an anchorage, will typically put down a bow anchor and swing on the mooring. A refinement on that is picking up a line ashore or putting a line ashore so that you still sit on your bow mooring, on your anchor chain, but you're secured to the shore in some fashion so that the boat doesn't swing. Sometimes this is just a convenience to put more boats in a relatively small space. More often, it's a safety feature to keep the boat from swinging into another boat or into dangerous waters, and the line ashore is put around a tree or around a rock. It involves somebody going ashore in a dinghy and scrambling up on the rocks. And anyway, this works, but it's much better to have a pin set into the rocks on shore, and then somebody can go ashore in a kayak or a dinghy, put a line through the pin, and then the boat sits quite happily on the bow mooring and the stern tie. So the advantage to this, to the park, of course, is that the anchor chain doesn't drag around the bottom and damage the inshore habitat, which is an issue if there's different types of eelgrass, different sensitive bottom habitat. Also on shore, it's a bad idea to put lines around a tree if we don't have to. And of course, the arbutus on the shore will appreciate that. And it allows us to use the area with less impact on the environment. So Desolation Sound has seen a lot of this work over the years. As you know, it's a fairly popular, very popular cruising destination. The Copeland Islands, Galley Bay, Grace Harbor, Laura Cove, Melanie Cove, Prito Haven in particular, Tenedos Bay, Scobel Island, all have stern ties in place for the purposes that I mentioned. We've upgraded the stern ties on Giroday Island, and we're investigating stern ties at Harmony Island with BC Parks and First Nations. The concept is that we provide guidance on where to put them and how to put them. We provide the materials, and then we prefer to have BC Parks, or in your case, the qathet contractors actually install them, and then the ownership passes over to qathet or another entity once they're installed.
Thank you, Jim, very much. And I just want to stress 2 points here, which is not in the presentation. Number one, this is not just large boat owners that are accessing these areas. A lot of kayakers and small boat owners are. And secondly, the large boat owners that are accessing in the majority are BC boaters. There are American visitors, but this is the statistics have shown that it's primarily BC boaters that are coming up. And finally, in conclusion, there's a request is for the committee to discuss the possibility of similar partnerships in your district. And I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to make the presentation. I apologize for the large queue. It should have been a small queue. I did not pick up on that, but I now have learned that that was inappropriate. But we'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Michael and Jim, for your presentation. I'll ask directors if they have questions of the delegation. Director Lennox.
Thanks, and thanks for your presentation. You've got a map of most of Area A there. And so when your question about if we're familiar, many of the directors and staff and folks in the area are very familiar with stern ties. So I've got a couple of, I'm going to rattle off a few things and maybe no particular order. Your request, I have interest, as I can speak for myself and the residents in my area, an interest in this topic and how it affects us and the opportunities. So I'll start there. You've mentioned similar partnerships with other regional districts. So if you have any examples of that, maybe.
Well, currently there's only one, and that's with the Cowichan Regional District, where we have established stern ties. Is it in Butte Island, Jim, the stern ties for Cowichan?
Yes, it is. It's Butte Island, an island purchased by the Cowichan Valley Regional District, became quite popular, and to address the crowding and deal with the environmental issues that we discussed, we were approached to put in stern ties. We put in 8 of them, and been very well received. Been quite successful.
I think on the same tack, it's very important in our area, the involvement of the Tla'amin Nation. Area A is then the Tla'amin Nation's area and vice versa. We're neighbors, and you're well aware that much of their territory that they monitor with their guard and are looking to protect their assets is heavily impacted by the traffic there. And of course, we've all seen it. Most of us locals don't go into those areas in the summer. So there's a heavy impact. I just want to kind of realize that, it should be acknowledged there's many pros, and I think safety is definitely one of them. I like to swing on anchor, but we can't, right, when we go into these areas. So there is an impact to everything we're doing. I think most of the directors are wondering about the land part. URD doesn't typically have a lot of land per se. So what are the requirements of these areas as far as land on the foreshore? And it's probably related to the parks themselves.
Yes, in the park situation, the land would belong to the provincial government. And it's not a case of trying to infringe on anybody's rights.
Right.
I believe I came here from Nova Scotia. As I understand in BC, you have access to the mean high water mark. Is that correct? So you would not be going beyond that. You'll be respecting the upland or riparian owners' rights. Upland owners' rights. But Jim, I believe the BC Trails Association, this is more orientated towards kayaking. They are working very hard to establish relationships with the various First Nation groups. And we are looking to find out more about what they're doing. And am I correct in saying we're looking at working together more on this?
Yes, most definitely. When it comes to the the interface, of course, between government, First Nations, and organizations like ourselves, we have in the past deferred to BC Parks, for instance, to take the lead on that, and introduce us, so to speak, and the issues to First Nations. That's definitely being sensitive to that has definitely slowed down our application of stern ties, etc. BC Marine Trails Paddlers Organization has done a good job of establishing relationships with First Nations, and we think that's a good model. We would certainly prefer to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem when it comes to these issues, these locations that are heavily utilized. So look forward to doing more of that. And I should point out that in some cases, mooring buoys or though they're more expensive. They require some maintenance every couple of years, but they're a better solution in many applications, especially where the foreshore is sensitive. And we've done that in some locations.
Thanks. I just encourage you to work with both the Tla'amin Nation, the Malco, and the other nations that are in the area and have identified to us that there are very specific locations that you really shouldn't allow people to use in a heavy, intensive way. And I guess just lastly, any cost recovery issues that all of these parties in BC Parks, you're asking the QRD to maybe maintain something, there's costs. So any ideas around cost recovery will probably be part of a report that we would ask for. So thanks. I know that's a lot.
Okay, well, that's fine. As I say, the important thing is to start a dialogue here.
Mhm.
And if the dialogue goes nowhere, then so be it. But if it can lead to a betterment of the facilities you can offer through our assistance, then that becomes a win for us and a win for you.
Great.
We are, as I say, a totally volunteer organization. So
Thank you. Director Gisborne,
Can I first request that the time be extended for the delegation?
I beg your pardon?
Oh, can I first request that the time be extended for the delegation?
Oh, yes. Is there agreement around the table for doing that? Yeah. I'm
No,
assuming
I
those-
just-
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Director Lennox used
I
it
used it
all. Couple of questions. So the first one is, I see you've worked with the provincial government in the past to acquire some parkland with some contributions. And I know our regional district is looking at doing some parkland acquisition in the future. And if there is, say, a site that might actually meet some of these kind of criteria for shoreline tie-ups, would you be interested in partnering with us in the future for parkland acquisition if that is a site that also works for you guys?
I can't answer on behalf of the board, but Jim, maybe you want to answer that one.
Well, I can assure you that's actually our primary interest. We were established initially to acquire and help acquire additional parklands, and some of our donors earmarked their funds specifically for that. So the answer is most definitely yes. And either we or qathet could identify a location, and I would be happy to put forward a couple of spots that you might consider. And we would be very pleased to participate.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear. Taking a look at regional district parks and the map that you've provided, there's a few regional district parks that we do have ownership. Of course, some may not be like they're on the foreshore. They may not be suitable for having, shoreline tie-ups. I think Palm Beach might be one of those because it's kind of fairly exposed. But I believe there is Myrtle Rocks, which there's quite often boats that are tied up there, which is in Area B, which is my area, just south of town. And there's also Shelter Point Regional Park and Boot Point Regional Park. And I guess my question is, are those locations that you might be interested in working with us on?
We were contacted by Patrick Devereaux, who I believe is member staff, and I had an email from him back in December when we started scoping out making the presentations, and he did identify Myrtle Rocks and Shelter Cove. Jim, you've had a look at these on the chart. Do you have and you have comments on them? Would you like to share those, please?
Well, yes, Shelter Point in particular looked attractive. That's short of going up there and walking the beach and looking it over more carefully. It looks like a location that would lend itself to mooring buoys. The Myrtle Rocks, not familiar with. It looks a bit exposed on the chart, but would need to put more thought into that. Boot Point, I'm not familiar with. Can you explain to me just where that is?
I think Director Fall can explain that one a bit better than I can. Go ahead.
Well, Boot Point's, my guess is it wouldn't be very suitable. It's basically a little point with gravel on both sides, and it's a pile of gravel. It's really small. It's double wide road allowance. That's a regional park now. So there's not really a lot of rock right there, but it's regional park. So if you look at
Okay, yeah, because the reason I bring up Myrtle Rocks, as well as the name implies, it's kind of like a big rock sitting in the ocean. So that might be beneficial, but of course it is kind of exposed to southeasterlies. But I see boats anchored there all the time. So.
And it may be something that could be more multi-use if you're looking at kayakers or small boat owners. who would come in for the day and anchor off and access the beach.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Director Southcott and then Director Paul.
Thank you very much. For the presentation, I am a voter too. Definitely boys would be the only way to go in Shelter Cove. The bottom is really hard to anchor and it's rocks and weeds until it's too deep. There's a couple of typos on your presentation in case you're going to use it elsewhere. Giroday is marked as actually Lafidi on page 2, and Grace Harbor is actually marked the way it's marked. It's actually it's on page 3 is actually Theodosia. I have 2 questions for you. My assumption was that your interest is in locations that are anchorable or that voters would be attracted to. Just want to confirm that that is your interest, that if areas that aren't attractive to voters are not of interest to you, like marine areas.
Now you're talking for conservation purposes or for access by public by small?
Conservation, recreation, public, park interest.
I would have to say that our board would look most favorably on contributing to places that our supporters who are recreational boaters could make use of, most of whom have boats that anchor off. Not to say that we wouldn't, under some circumstances, contribute, but our priority certainly is places that can be used by recreational boaters. I've improved facilities for them, stern tide, mooring buoys, sometimes a dinghy dock, a park host float. Those are the types of things we've supported in the past. And of course, acquisition of new parklands would still be our favorite. But once again, something that we can sell to our members as something beneficial for recreational boaters.
Thank you. That's what I understood. Just one more quick.
Well, sorry, and if I may add to that,
Oh, yeah.
we might be able to steer you towards another organization who'd be interested in making that acquisition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Southcott.
Can I
Yes.
just one quick one?
Sure.
Musket Island, or is there any plan to put chains on Musket or Hardy? The Musket Island Marine Park.
Jim, Muscat Island?
We haven't been approached by BC Parks. We believe that it's status quo. Not aware of anything different to be done there. Did you have a suggestion?
Well, people do stern try to trees there. It's really tight.
Yes.
It's absolutely a stern tie location, so they'll keep tying to trees until, well, some of us actually take old rope and tie slings around trees so that we don't damage the trees.
Yes, that's what I do as well.
Then they rot. People use old ropes. Anyway, thank you very much.
Well, look, I apologize for the typos. I'm sort of working on information. I'm in Port Nova Scotia. I was involved in an organization that my wife and I started, very, very similar to this, called Mahone Islands Conservation Association. And we were facing the increased development of this islands in this bay. And we started off, we acquired one island. People said we would not get anywhere, and we have since raised over $2.5 million, and we have 23 islands and properties in public ownership now. Public ownership is with the municipalities or with the provincial governments, and also shared with the Nature Conservancy of Canada. So there's a lot that citizens can do to get engaged. But what we're basically is we're offering you here an opportunity of what we have available, both money-wise and expertise, to further develop the facilities. But very much appreciate the time. I pretty much even more appreciate the fact that having questions asked, because sometimes I've seen presentations made. I served as a counselor for 8 years, and there's a blank wall of silence that follows the presentation. So.
Thank you, Director Southcott. Now, Director Paul is next. I just wanted to ask everyone if you're okay to extend the time another 5 minutes. Okay, go ahead. Greg.
Yeah, I'll be fairly brief. I have several questions. I'll just ask them.
Oh, sure. Please.
So I'm the director from Lasqueti Island. So so Giroday is it's the little one between Texada and but it's so I guess the three aspect question. One is so if I understand correctly, the land acquisition component of Parks Forever, Marine Parks Forever, you don't hold on to land, you transfer it to someone. So the question really is that always to a public entity, or do you also transfer to other land conservancy type organizations like BC Parks Foundation that has acquired additional land near Squiddy Bay? And I'm not sure, I think that, the Squiddy Bay's expanded a couple times. So there was a recent acquisition there of land right adjacent, which is great. So that's one question, is who maybe more information on how that works. Second is related. So these tie-up points are primarily in parks, if I understand, but are they always in parks? So for example, I could think of some sites on Lasqueti Island where there's, packed in boating, the secure, because Lasqueti's pretty exposed and there's some little bays that get really packed and stern to, that would be to give access to the parks, but they're not in, they're not public land. And I understand if it's not, that's totally fine. And the third aspect of it is related to public consultation, and it's a bit of a extending the thoughts that Director Lennox was asking about, which is that some of these sites, like on Lasqueti Island, having better tie-up points in Deep Bay, which is Giroday Island's quite remote in a way. It's right there for Lasqueti, but it's kind of, there's no one around there, so there's no, I think, concerns from the public of it's beneficial environmentally. Or boats, it's popular. I think there's lots of benefits all around to have better tie-ups. But some other points, that are closer to where there's other uses, and I think it's whether it's First Nations uses, but also public use from the foreshore. So people are always concerned about change, so they need at least consultation and so on. So parks like Squiddy that people go to land. So the question is, would this relationship with the QRD be trying to, requesting us to do some of that public consultation, which would be on us to do anyways, I think. And that's maybe the question, if that partnership to do some of these tie-ups would require some public consultation. Is that what you'd be looking for us to do that public engagement? So that's the three questions.
Okay. BC Parks Foundation, I believe the society just made $200,000 donation towards the BC Parks Foundation. There's a $13 million project to acquire the land down Saturna Bay. So that's one. Public consultation, Jim, how do you see that, our role in that?
Okay, well, it was a three-part question. Let's see if I've got it right, but I'll answer the last question first, if I may. Squiddy Bay, that was a very successful expansion of the park, nominally called Squiddy Bay Marine Provincial Park, and of course there's new lands attached to it in the southwest. That was a successful initiative by the Parks Foundation. I was in there a couple of years ago to see if there was any way we could work our way into that in some sensible fashion. And I spoke to the people that were looking after the docks there, and they seemed fairly entrenched in the status quo. And unfortunately, it's not really friendly to visiting boaters. So there isn't another good location, so far as I know, apart from anchoring off the beach in good weather. If there was some way that qathet could improve the situation with the dock in Squiddy Bay, we would be happy to contribute to moorings or, improved facilities in some fashion there. But I think it really would involve qathet and whatever the entities are on Lasqueti to make that a little more accessible, a little more amenable to visiting boaters, to do anything sensible with Squiddy Bay. With regards to land ownership, we're pretty flexible. We have to be, as we're dealing with different organizations. One we dealt with, as an example, was Saturnina Island off of Silva Bay, and we brought that to the Parks Foundation. BC Parks didn't want to be involved with it. It was private property, willing seller, willing buyer, pretty straightforward from our perspective. But BC Parks thought there were other issues with it. There were First Nations complications, I believe. And so they pointed us towards the Parks Foundation, who were mindful of those issues, but not constrained to the same extent. And to make a long story short, they purchased it, and then they passed it on to the Islands Trust. So Islands Trust has the stewardship of that little island off Silva Bay. Right now, I believe the new lands off Lasqueti Island are still owned by BC Parks Foundation, but they would be eager to pass it on to whichever government entity makes the most sense. And we would sort of fit in wherever it makes sense with a regional district. If we can promote an acquisition or take part in an acquisition, I mean, we would like to put some wording in an agreement that would make sure that it's preserved for public use going forward. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. And I just, if I make one comment, it might be worthwhile reaching out to some local conservancies. There's Lasqueti Island Nature Conservancy link. That could be a good contact. I can give a contact if you want, or you can look them up on the website, and they might, provide some information of local conditions and opportunities.
Sure, good idea. Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Local knowledge is a valuable tool, and this is what you can provide as well.
Thank you, and we appreciate you being here. And seeing no further hands, I have one quick question. I'm the director of Texada, and there is a marine provincial park in South Texada. I'm just wondering if that is on your radar screen, or if you have any plans for it, or otherwise. It's not accessible by land.
To get on the radar screen, we have to be made aware of it. It's because, as I mentioned, we're presenting to 8 regional districts here. So we're not sure what's going to be coming back at us after we've done the presentation. We're going to try and do 4 this spring, and then we're going to do the other 4 maybe in the autumn. It just takes time to put everything together, and physical traveling is an issue as well. My wife and I love coming up here, so this is a trip out for us. Last week I was on the ferries at 6:20 in the morning, leaving Langdale and getting back at 6:30 at night, because I wasn't going to pay $100 to fly across like a sea 20 miles away. Sorry?
We can relate.
So the world of ferries are much better than I do. But local knowledge is very important, and if there's something that you identify there, please through your channels, of course, otherwise you cannot speak if you have the regional district approval, bring it to our attention.
Okay, so I'm just mentioning the Provincial Marine Park in South Texada.
Yes, I'm aware of that, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's one that, if I'm not mistaken, that's to the west of Anderson Bay, is it not?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Well, definitely familiar with Anderson Bay, and it's another favorite spot for boaters. Very, very pretty.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I've taken up a lot of your time, but
You have, and the lights are flashing, and
sorry, you have a lot of very important business to get on with, but thank you for this time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's been a very much a worthwhile visit, and we really like coming up here. Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you, folks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right, so back to the agenda.
Sure, just before we move on for council or director, so
Sorry, Chair.
okay, thanks, Chair. Just in regards to this business, it appears to me that our staff's already engaged with this organization, and so I was going to make a motion, but I don't feel it's necessary. Am I correct in that we're already engaged? That's what I heard from the delegation.
We heard Mr. Devereaux's name.
Yeah. I would like, well, let me test, what was your motion going to be about?
I was just going to actually acknowledge their request to engage and ask for like potential staff report on the subject.
Go for it.
Okay, well, I guess I'm making a motion to that effect coming out of this
Okay, so your motion is to engage with the Marine Parks Forever Society
Right.
and for a staff report to be developed on potential.
Impacts and benefits to the QRD engagement.
We understand. You're seconding Director Fall. Okay, discussion on the motion. Director Gisborne.
Sorry, something's coming to my mind in relation to some of the discussion related to the planning department's work plan and the parkland acquisition policy strategy. And I'm kind of wondering if like this motion can be like merged with that land acquisition, because I think there's a opportunity there on both fronts. And I don't think there's an amendment needed, but I just wanted to put that out there. Because I was really excited to hear how much work they've done to do acquisition of parkland, and I think that that is one of our priorities as well.
Thank you so much, Director Fall.
I just like to, and I think this is a really good motion, but I think staff, it'll really help staff look into where the options are, because what's the role? Like some areas, regional parks, what are the options not outside regional parks, in other parks, like discussion around Squiddy Bay as an example. Squiddy Bay is very strained, but it's a provincial park. There's a dock there, a wharf there. It's a federal wharf. The federal government would love to get rid of it. So far they haven't. So it's
Impacts and benefits.
and I don't think we want to take it on. The government wants to get rid of it.
Right.
Pouring money into it. So, I think the staff report would be great, because looking at all these issues and in a holistic way of also the consultation, First Nations issues, public. So I think it'd be really useful for us to have a handle of how we can best engage and what we can actually really do other than just sort of saying general support.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there further discussion on the motion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. So we can now move on to unfinished business 5.1, which is the committee terms of reference policy. And you'll note that the recommendation pertains to a recommendation that was made previously in November, which is the second part of this. And you'll also note that in the report on page 24 is the old version with the old language, and on page 18 is the revised wording. So the work has been done following that motion in November. So would you like to have questions or discussion first, or could we entertain a recommendation at this time? Director Isaacson.
Yeah, I'll move the motion in the package to recommend.
Second that.
Thank you, and Director Lennox is seconded. Discussion on that motion. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Boy, they were all that. So we have 3 items of correspondence. Is there any business arising from this correspondence? And I'm going to put my hand up there because I'd like to move item 6.2 become 7.1. Are there any other items? Okay.
Question with regard to 6.3.
So 6.3 will become 7.2. Okay. So if we can now move on to business arising, the request for the regional district to give permission to hold the annual Texada fly-in, which takes place scheduled for July 27th. So they're asking for permission to do this and also to communicate that permission back to them so that they can advise Transport Canada. So I would entertain a motion to do that.
So,
okay, all Lennox, thank you. Discussion on that motion. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? 7.2, which is the former 6.3. Director Selcott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this letter seems really clear when I read it very carefully. The province will take responsibility for what was in question in more than one meeting here. But I wanted to be really sure and ask if staff understood that the letter to be as clear as I feel it is.
Through the chair, unfortunately, Ryan Toms isn't with us today, but yeah, I believe this is clear. We're getting a little bit of pushback from them on the other end. And I think that'll just put through the course over time.
Okay, Director Paul.
Just a follow-up question on that, and I think the province's intent with the letters clear. They're basically saying we'll cover the costs. What I'm not 100% convinced of is what they mean exactly. You know, I mean, are there dollar costs of? They're completely clear that they'll cover the costs of what they, you know, their investigator that they assigned, but I don't think they're as clear that they'll cover the costs incurred by our people, our staff, and our members of departments when they accompany them or show them or provide information. They're not doing it independent. They're not going to, unless they come up and do these investigations without talking to our fire department, which wouldn't be right. But if they're talking to the fire chief, it's fire chief time. So I guess it's really the question for through the chair, maybe to our CAO, since our manager of emergency services isn't here. Would it be useful, or will we be tracking that? I mean, we haven't had any, but if we have them, track the time that we incur, so we can actually in the future, if the costs become, if they're manageable, fine, and if they start to be kind of expensive, then we have facts that we can go back to the province, say, you're paying for this, but actually it still cost us X dollars to help you, and you said you'd cover it. It's written here. Pay back. Give us a check.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair. We hadn't discussed that. We can certainly implement something of that nature. I know that, I don't know if he actually recorded his time, but Ryan was very cognizant of his time when he first reached out for the initial request for their assistance. If we implement this, then we could have a record that would stand, accumulate those hours, and then have something, file quantitative numbers to give back to them. I do know that and I appreciate that this is a really political dilemma or issue province-wide. It's just not us. Because of that, we'll have to make a concerted effort with our fire chiefs as to how involved they get. Because if you notice on that last paragraph on the first page, they do state that it may be as simple as getting photographs or getting a report from your fire chief or whomever. And we will have to really stress the importance to our fire chiefs that this is your political bailiwick. This is your fight, if you will. And they will have to respect that there's only so far that they can go. Because again, Ryan has been designated as both the investigator and the inspector. So we can certainly put that in place. And I think it's an excellent idea. And we'll just have to all come together as a team to ensure that we've got a good deposit of that information if ever called upon.
Thank you. And just as a brief follow-up comment, I think if we were to do that, if it starts to add up, because I agree, when it's easy for the province to say, it would only be, we'll keep costs down by making it remote. Well, keep their costs down. That puts more costs on us because how do they get the information? We're sending someone out to take pictures and so on. So that seems like an avenue for downloading if we're not careful. If we have costs, then we could actually, if we want to, we could go through either directly or we could go through ABICC and consider resolutions through ABICC or UBCM to get other local governments on board, because maybe if needed, we raise the issue, because other local governments will also be able to have information ideally to say, well, we've got these costs too, and if it builds up, and if it doesn't, well then great.
Thanks, Director Paul. I completely agree. Director Lennox.
Yeah, thanks. And I was actually going to reinforce the concept of tracking this specifically because that paragraph is very clear that they would rather do it remotely and ask our regional district staff to get the information and send it to them. Now we get to decide if that's Mr. Tom's or whoever that is, but again, that cost is ours. And then it says they'll make every effort possible to minimize impacts to our staff, which means there are going to be impacts. And I suggest it'll be every single fire, because they need to be investigated and they need those basic facts on the simple fires. So Mr. Tom's will be, I'm just saying we're going to be impacted by this. So I suggest we definitely track it.
Thank you. Director Gibb.
Well, thank you, Chair. One of the annoyances I have with this whole issue is that there's actually two issues. There's investigators and there's inspectors. And they're kind of just clumped together. And as the CEO pointed out, that last paragraph, when requested or required, OFC investigators and inspectors will travel to a regional district to conduct their work. However, when circumstances permit, the OFC will explore other means to conduct its work. And then it says, for example, in cases where cause and origin of a fire can be determined through photographs, so on and so forth. That's referring to investigation, but it's not actually making any reference to inspection. And that's where I'm also kind of going like, okay, if we get a complaint, they say, oh, we want to get an inspection, are they going to ask our guys to go out and take pictures and then send it off to them? And I'm like, okay, I'm aware that we used to do investigations after a fire was done, but the inspection side of it, I'm like, my political stance is that's a line in the sand. It's like, no, we don't do the inspections of public buildings and all that kind of stuff. The investigation after a fire has been done, I would be willing to have like some wiggle room on that, but through resolution by the board. And I would like to know, more in relation to the costs. But that's where I see this issue as actually two issues. One's inspection, one's investigations. And the inspection side to me is a hard no. So just wanted to clarify that in terms of my political stance.
Okay, thank you. Well, right now, there's no question or issue on the table, having a discussion. Is there anything further? Question for CAO. In order to track kind of like a time and motion report, do you need a motion from the board to do that, or will that take place as part of your typical operation?
Through the chair, I won't need it, that it's operational.
Operational. Okay. That's good. Anything further, Director Gisborne?
Yeah, and just a question related to the question asked of our CAO. When those hours are calculated, are they going to be clumped together as investigations and inspections, or will they be like one's investigations and one's inspections? I don't think we have a lot of inspections going on right now, but
Chair, I'm unaware of any inspections that we've done already in my time here. I think the closest we've come was a fire hall not a fire hall inspection, an inspection of a restaurant in our jurisdiction by the city fire hall so that they could get what's the word? Yeah, but what's the word?
business license.
The accommodation, the number of people in it? Occupancy. That's the closest that I can recall ever coming.
Okay.
For a public building.
I didn't think it was a common occurrence, so.
The only thing that we see is just one column, and it'll probably all be dealing with fires.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further on this item? Seeing no hands, thank you, directors. There are no reports on our agenda and no new business, so we are at questions. Other questions for the committee today?
Chair Galinsky from the Peak here. No questions today. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Paul. In camera session, would someone like to read the motion about the proposed closed session, Director Gisborne?
Sure. I move that the committee move in camera, the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91K, negotiations and related discussions, respecting the proposed provision of a regional district service that are at their preliminary stages, not in the view of the committee could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district if they were held in public, and end the consideration of whether a committee meeting should be closed under provision of this subsection or subsection 2.
Seconded by Director Lennox.
Easy for me.
Favor? Any opposed? Carried. We're going in camera. Thank you.
We can make it just a straight in cap for you.
Cover the external. Sure. Yeah, right. Get into your whole thing. 10.
Would have been given that permission. Actually, got the thing.
Still feeling a bit beat up.
That's like,
Cover yourself over. Kind of like this. And the other end is like straight.
Feel like I don't want to.
almost there.
Recording in progress.
In fact,
We'll have some.
Well, it's just, yeah, it's moving around.
To be clear of both square feet.
And if the committee doesn't.
Everything depends on. I actually had someone put that out there like. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chair, we're back into session.
Welcome back to Committee of the Whole. We have no rise and report, so we're adjourned. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, the ALR.